Good evening, everybody. This is Mike Haltman. I am the CEO of Hallmark Abstract Service, and I welcome you to the Do You Ever Wonder LinkedIn Live program. And we're very excited to be here tonight. Right now, you may see frozen faces on the screen, and there's a good reason for that. If you look at Bill Weidner on screen left, take a good look at his face because he's going to be disappearing. And he's probably going to be disappearing right about now. Because for anyone who remembers our podcast from 2 weeks ago, we had a couple of issues with volume and a couple of issues with overall me not being able to hear my guest. So tonight, the issue is that for some reason, Bill's screen is freezing, which then leads my screen to freeze. And looking at my mouth right now, it seems as if I'm still freezing. But that said, let me just go a little bit through the goals of the LinkedIn Live presentation that we're doing. So our goal is really to target guests who can provide opinions, who can provide information, and really actionable information on different things going on around the city, around the country, topics that go from real estate to topics that have nothing to do with real estate. So for anyone who was with us 2 weeks ago, we were talking about podcasting and the importance of podcasting for our businesses, for our branding, but more than that, just about how podcasting is difficult, and podcasting live or broadcasting live is even more difficult because issues come up, and boy, do they seem to come up. I seem to be getting them all over these past two shows, but we keep plugging along, so it really doesn't matter. So for those who live in New York City, looking around, it's hard to realize that there are about 400,000 commercial buildings in New York City. That's just a vast number. I mean, to me, that kind of blew my mind. But some of these buildings have GPS or gas piping systems, and some of these do not have gas piping systems. But that said, the topic of this broadcast is New York City Local Law 152. And what that says is that every building, regardless of whether they have gas piping or not, needs to be inspected. It's a little bit of an under the radar subject, but that said, anyone who manages, owns, or is in any way involved with a commercial building, they need to have this taken care of. And we're fortunate tonight, as in 2 weeks ago, we had an expert in podcasting. Tonight, we have someone who knows all of the ins and outs of New York City Local Law 152. He's a commercial real estate broker. He also has his own podcast, Realty Speak, but he's also the managing partner of Keep My Gas. And Keep My Gas is a company dedicated to doing these inspections of the commercial buildings for whether they have gas or whether they don't have gas. So please join me in welcoming Bill Weidner. Bill, welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks so much, Michael. And and everybody, I'm really sorry that you can't see me. We did try with a couple of different cameras between yesterday and today, and for some reason it just didn't work out, but you can hear me. Anyway, I just want to clarify a couple of things there. So Keep My Gas actually is a consulting company. The inspections can only be done by specific professionals. So one of those professionals for the gas piping systems would be a licensed master plumber, or someone who's employed by a licensed master plumber that has a specific time frame of experience and certain qualifications. The non-gas buildings can only be inspected by a registered design professional in New York City, which would be a professional PE, sometimes referred to as a professional engineer, or an RA, which is a registered architect. Now, as you said, Michael, you said, I'm a commercial real estate broker. My brother, Douglas, is a licensed master plumber. And back in the late 2019, when Local Law 152 started coming above the radar, I asked him about it. And I realized, you know what, this is going to be another one of those difficult things to comply with. So why don't we put something together where we can inform people based on all the research we're doing, and then we can facilitate the compliance with you doing the inspections, you being my brother. And lo and behold, here we have it. We launched in August. We were a little held up because of the pandemic, but we launched in August of 2020. And the name of the company is Keep My Gas LLC. The website is keepmygas.nyc. And we have a shortcut, ll152.com. LL standing for local law. ll152.com. So, Michael, I get the sense you want to ask a question.
All right. Was that the noise I was making? Absolutely, Bill. I do want to ask a question. So there are 400,000 buildings in the city, and I would imagine that just like in every industry, when there's a regulation or something that needs to be done by a date certain time, a lot of people kind of ignore it. So I guess the first question that I'm thinking of is what number of owners are really paying attention to this compliance that needs to be done?
Well, let's talk about what types of buildings we're discussing here. First of all, 1 and 2 family dwellings, which are in the R3 occupancy group, not R3 zoning, R3 occupancy group, which is a little different than zoning. You typically find that on the CO, Certificate of Occupancy, are exempt from a local law 152 inspection. So that leaves us with small mixed-use buildings and then everything else above that. So 3 family, 4 family, 5 family, industrial, hotels, office buildings, multifamily mixed use, the list goes on and on. Now, I would say that everybody that is aware of Local Law 152, which many more people are becoming aware now, they're definitely paying attention to it, because if you don't have it done by the deadline, and we'll talk a little bit about the deadline in a minute, because it straddles 4 consecutive calendar years, starting with 2020. If you don't comply, you make yourself subject to a major violation and a $10,000 fine. So that's something that obviously you want to avoid. There's enough going on in the city without worrying about that too.
So is the fine, I'm sorry to interrupt, but is the fine a one-time fine, or is that something that...
You know what? I actually have been asked that question lately, and I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay.
And I'm going to find it, and then I'm going to put it on the frequently asked questions on our website.
Well, whether it's one time or more than one time, you wouldn't really want to even get it one time. So
right, yeah, definitely not. So so the way it's set up, well, first of all, it's Local Law 152 of 2016. So it became law in December of 2016. And the impetus for the law was the big gas explosions that happened in 2014 and 15 up in East Harlem and in the East Village. Everyone who was around then remembers those. It was on the news. It was in the papers. It was devastating. People lost their lives. So the city council took a look at it and said, hey, what can we do to create something where we get these inspections done and maybe avoid something like that? So they came out with Local Law 152. It was passed and signed by the mayor in 2016 in December. And then they had to come up with a way to enforce it. And because like you said, there's 300,000 to 400,000 buildings that are impacted by this over a 4-year period. So you're certainly not going to do them all at once. So what happened is they said, let's do it over 5 years. Then they changed it to 4 years, and they said, we'll do it by community district. So every borough has a set of community districts. For instance, Staten Island has 3 community districts because it's a smaller borough. I believe Brooklyn has 18, and I think that's the most you can have. So each one of these community districts have boundaries, and any building which falls in specific community districts for each of the 4 years, starting in 2020, are required to have the local law 152 inspection to certify that the gas piping system is okay, or to certify that there is no gas piping system in a building for buildings that do not have gas by December 31st of that calendar year. So for 2020, it was community districts 1, 3, and 10 in all 5 boroughs. Based on my research, I think that was about 70,000 buildings. Now, this probably addresses a little bit your question. And the city council actually extended the law because of the pandemic to 2020 to June 30th. So it gave people from 2020 an extra 6 months.
Right.
And at the time that they extended the law, and this is public information, there were about 8,000 of those certifications that had been filed. And I'm telling you that I think it was around 70,000 buildings that would have been impacted in 2020. So that gives you a sense of how many people were aware of it and actually taking action on it. Now, obviously, we had a pandemic, and that's why the time frame to get this done had to be extended, and it was.
Let me ask you, Bill. So, quick question. So,
go ahead.
So it's an enormous amount of buildings, and I'm assuming that each inspection takes a decent amount of time to complete. How many master plumbers are there available to do these inspections? You know, how quickly can an inspection get done?
All right. Well, remember, I said 70,000 buildings, but that's also non-gas buildings. So it's hard to know, like, how many of those buildings have gas, and those are be the ones that licensed master plumbers would have to inspect, or employees of licensed master plumbers that have certain qualifications and have taken a course, a 7-hour course, and also demonstrated that they understand how to do the inspection. The number of licensed master plumbers, and if you go to the Department of Buildings website, you can look this up yourself. I believe the last list, which is a little old, it's about 3 or 4 years old, there were about 1,200 licensed master plumbers on that list, but then of course they have people that work for them. So if you do the math, it's possible, to get it all done, and I'm sure the City Council and the Department of Buildings took that into consideration. But yes, there's probably a little bit more of a demand than there is people to actually do them. And, that lends itself to there being a situation where maybe someone wants to get it done and they can't get it done. Also, right. Think about it, right? In a gas building, if you have gas heat and gas hot water, and you anticipate there being some kind of a problem that could cause an interruption of gas service, which is possible, all right, you're probably not going to have this done in December or January or February. You're probably going to wait till March or April or May or June or July or August, and then start thinking about it again as we get into heating season, because you don't want an interruption in gas service that can impact that.
So, Bill, has the city implemented any kind of program where they're actually reaching out to the building owners, or is it really the impetus is up to them to really know about it, deal with it?
The city, let's face it, if you own a building in one of the 5 boroughs, especially a commercial building, an investment property, you or a rental property that you live in, that's a 3-family or more, you're responsible for making sure that you're complying with all the laws in the municipality where you happen to have your building. Now, you can go to you can just Google DOB NYC service updates, and it'll take you right to a link to the service updates that the Department of Buildings posts on a periodic basis. And if you look at that, you'll be pretty informed. There are also some great organizations that advocate for landlords and help landlords comply. There's one called Site Comply, which is SITECOMPLI.com. And I know them, and they're fantastic, and they help owners comply with the different things that they need to comply with. There's also RSA, Rent Stabilization Association. So if you Google Rent Stabilization Association, there's also CHIP, Community Home Improvement Program. And there's also SPONY, Small Property Owners of New York, spony.org. Now, if you go to ll152.com and you go to the website, and by the way, when you go to that, a little pop-up comes up, gives you three choices. Just click on go to homepage, and then go to the menu and pick resource. And there's a resource area there for property owners and property managers. And the first choice, the first drop down on the upper left is property owner advocate organizations. And CHIP, RSA, and SPONY are listed there. And there's also instructions how to access their website, how to sign up for their email. If you just signed up for the email and or joined any one or all three of those organizations, you would always know what you need to do and when you need to do it. So I highly recommend that.
That's great information, and you are obviously incredibly knowledgeable about the subject, which I don't think a lot of people out there are. And that leads me to wonder, as a commercial...
Well, I never answered your question.
Oh, I don't even remember what it was.
Your question was, has the city done something proactively? Yes. Okay. So the one thing they do is they post those notices on the website. But you know what? Not everybody that owns a building has access to the website. So in answer to your question, yes. The city council, when they extended the law in December, they also mandated that the Department of Buildings do an outreach program. And so at the end of March, they had to do it by the end of March. At the end of March, they sent out a letter to everybody informing them exactly what it is. And they also created a great website on the DOB website with a step-by-step of how to comply with local law 152. Now, if you go to that same resources page, in the description of the page at the top, I actually have a link to that. And then I also have a link to it in the last question in the FAQs. If you go to the menu FAQ, then the last question, is there a official place that you can go to? And the answer to the question is yes, there is. And there's a link to that part of the website on the DOB.
So the city is definitely working to help building owners comply. It's not there are no secrets out there. The information.
No. Listen, they got a lot to deal with too, and they've also been through a pandemic. All right. So I mean, we're all dealing with challenges. I mean, look at what you and I are dealing with today. People can't even see my face. I mean, that's a terrible thing. I really feel bad for everybody. But
so I do too. But if they go to your website, then they can click on About. I think the link on the top is About, and they can get a good look at you.
Yeah, that's right. Now going back to the topic without diverging too much. The Department of Buildings in that step-by-step guide, and also many places on my website, they have a special email. It's LL152 of 16.gov.nyc. Don't do what I just said. Actually, go look for it. And it's a special email that they created where if you have a question about anything regarding local law 152 and you send them an email, they will get back to you, and they get back to you pretty quick. And actually, a lot of the questions that I have in the frequently asked questions were questions that I had during the late summer and the fall and the winter, and we're leading right up to now in the spring. And I get the answers to those questions from the Department of Buildings, because I want to point something out. I'm not an attorney, so I can't give you legal advice, all right? I'm not a plumber. I can't give you plumbing advice. And I can't tell you about whether something's going to be enforced or is not going to be enforced, because that's not in my jurisdiction. That's in the jurisdiction of the Department of Buildings of the city of New York. So I always say to people, if I share information with you, that's great, but don't make decisions based on it. If in order to be absolutely sure, you as the owner have to send this email to that special email. And then when you get the information and the answer from the Department of Buildings, you have something in writing that you can refer back to if there's ever a question later on.
Well, that's a terrific disclaimer, and I certainly understand why you're offering it. But by the same token, and I'm not going to call you an expert, but I think that you are very well versed in this topic. And I think that people who have questions about this topic can certainly go to the city, but they'd also be well served to speak to somebody like you. Would you?
Oh yeah, and I don't have a problem with. Usually, what happens is people call me, and then we have a conversation, and then depending on what the result of that conversation is, we decide whether or not we can move forward or not based on the information that we have that we know is accurate, or whether or not we have to go one step further and one of us has to reach out to the city to get confirmation. Yeah.
So now,
and I would never say to them, oh, if they describe to me their plumbing situation, I would say you got to discuss that with the plumber when they come and they do the inspection.
right, of course.
Right. Yeah.
But so my question before I had forgotten what my prior question was, as a commercial real estate broker, does your knowledge in this area give you some good value adds for your clients or prospects?
Well, here is how I've always ended. You okay there?
Yeah,
Mike, we don't
good.
want to lose you.
No, all good.
All right, good. All right. The way I've always handled my profession, and I've been in the real estate industry for a really, really long time, much longer than I'm willing to admit on LinkedIn Live, is that you always have something to learn on a daily basis, and you always have to be able to provide information to the people that are going to do business with you, so that there is some kind of value add. Like why otherwise would people do business with you? So I always try to do as much as I possibly can to help people be informed, so that they can accomplish what it is that they're trying to accomplish, whether it be running their building, selling their building, buying a building, financing their building. And what's great is sometimes people come to me and they ask me questions that I don't know the answer to. And then that's the impetus for me to go and get the answer from an expert who does know. And then that's one more, I guess you could say, one more feather in your cap that
Absolutely.
You could share with others to help people, get to the other side of the fence. And that's the way I like to look at things. Whenever somebody has a problem, the solution is on the other side of the fence. And you really have to understand, what is this person's problem that they're trying to get a solution to, and how do we get to the other side of the fence? And that's really the way to approach it. So in answer to your question, yes, I think it's a big value add.
All right. Well, I mean, in my business as well. So, there are a lot of people, as there are many commercial brokers, there are many title companies. So, we look to provide value that might not necessarily be provided elsewhere. And, that's really what you provide. Now, that you have to differentiate yourself, and that's a great way to do it, among others, but that's certainly a great way to do it. So what would you say, you've been in the city, you're living in the city, after this pandemic, what do you see as the next steps for the city?
Well, I consume a tremendous amount of information in the media, and also those three organizations that I provided to you. Obviously, I'm a member of all three of them, and actually engaged as much as I possibly can be with all three of them to really understand what direction are we going. And you watch a lot of webinars, you read a lot in the newspaper. Everyone's got an opinion about what's going to happen. I was out yesterday morning. I had to walk over to the east side a little bit. I live downtown near the World Trade Center, and I decided to walk instead of bike ride. And I walked back, and as walking back, the pools were open at the World Trade Center, and I hadn't walked near them in a while. And it's a really solemn, sacred place, and so I did. And it was just one of those beautiful mornings. It's like, it's like 10:30 in the morning, and the sun is nice and warm, and it's not too windy. And I took a photograph of one of the pools, and then in the backdrop of the pool was the Oculus. And then I walked over by the new, they call it Liberty Park, and there's a Greek church that's being built there, beautiful church. And there's a sculpture there that I hadn't seen before. I mean, it's probably been there a while, but I hadn't seen it. And it looks like an apple. And the apple is all, crunched up. And I'm not sure because I haven't looked it up yet, but I actually think it's pieces from the Twin Towers that they made this sculpture out of. And when you stand behind the sculpture looking north, exactly behind it is One World Trade Center. And I said, wow, what a reminder that when New York City is devastated, physically, emotionally, and psychologically, and now here are these symbols of resilience, the Oculus and the World Trade Center.
Well,
So the pool reminds you of what happened, and the Oculus reminds you of the resilience.
Well, there's no question that New York City is as resilient as any city ever was and ever will be. And, as someone who worked on the 107th floor of the World Trade Center, I can tell you that what happened was just an unbelievable thing to watch. But I do agree with you that going forward, I think the city is going to be fine because over time, the city always has been fine. And I think that in terms of, so I would like to thank you, Bill, because you've been a phenomenal guest. Your topic knowledge is incredible. We try to present people who are subject matter experts, and you certainly fill that bill. And I'm hoping that anyone who listens to this overlooks some of the technical details and listens to what you had to say. And if they have any questions, actually do reach out to you. One of the reasons I asked that question about what will be going on in our city moving forward has something to do with our next guest in 2 weeks, who's Rob Coopersmith, who's a managing director at Cushman & Wakefield, who will have his own opinions on the state of New York City and where we're going in the future, and the devastation of some of the commercial buildings and retail on the street, and where we're going and how we're going to get there, because we will get there. But I look forward to speaking to him. And just as an aside, so this was week 2 of the Hallmark Abstract live LinkedIn live feed. We've had issues today. We had issues 2 weeks ago. But my sincere pledge to anyone who's been here and anyone who has the nerve to come back when I send you another invitation is that these issues will be resolved. And at some point in the not too distant future, this will be the gold standard of LinkedIn Lives. And
you know what? I believe that, Michael. I really do. And for as long as I've known you, you're a take action person. When you and I originally talked about you doing this, you did what you had to do, and you're making it happen. And when you start something like this, there's always going to be issues. But yes. I really enjoyed Gordon last week. I really had a lot of fun with you today. Have tremendous amount of respect for you and your organization. I am really actually very, very flattered that you asked me to be here and do this with you. And I want to thank you so much for doing that. Thank you.
Oh, the honor is mine. And, what you know about this subject, and I don't know why, because it's not a frontline subject, but for some reason, the topic grabbed me of Local Law 152, and, your knowledge base is phenomenal. And,
well, thank you.
Yeah, no thanks necessary. And
do they shut us down at exactly 30 minutes?
They probably do, but
so then we're a few seconds away from saying goodbye. So I just want to say to people, ll152.com, and check out Realty Speak, the podcast, on your podcast app.
That was well done, Bill, and I appreciate you participating, my friend.
All right. I'm sorry the camera didn't work.
All right, you be good.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.